Save the Semantics, episode 53. It is December 23rd, 2018. My name is Myra. This is the podcast where I ramble on about topics, issues, or things that are currently on my mind. Once again, nearing the end of the year, although I'll probably be putting out a podcast, one more episode before the year ends. But this is just sort of, something that I wanted to do sort of on a weekly basis, more or less. It's been quiet. I feel like most podcasts sort of start off with me saying that it's been quiet, but it has been. Nothing too hectic or crazy that has been going on. Just sort of a daily dose of just waiting around. Waiting around for things to start, things to happen. I guess. Not that I'm complaining about that by any means. I generally how I like to plan my week or my day is to generally have moments of productivity. And if I don't have that, when I do relax or when I do spend my free time, enjoying myself, I feel that those moments aren't not as rewarding as if I haven't done something productive, prior to when I sort of spent my free time, I guess. And I'm sure other people feel the same way. I think that I'm not saying that you can't have, moments of time where you enjoy yourself at all. I'm just saying that I think that from my personal perspective, I think just having time, you have to kind of you give yourself time, but you also feel that if you don't do something that sort of lends yourself to do something, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that it's not as rewarding if you don't do anything within a span of time than if you do something within a span of time. That's all that I'm saying. And I think as much as I do enjoy these pockets of breaks, I think they do kind of they sort of they don't, I don't know about mess up, but they do sort of they sort of change up your schedule, because when I have school, I have like a set schedule. I know what to expect. I know when my classes are. I know when I have work and stuff like that. But now it's a little less infrequent, and once I do have a job, and I've talked about this in a relatively recent episode, how I would adjust to life after school, but it would definitely be an adjustment for sure, just because I would actually have a schedule, and I'm sure that there's gonna be both the pros and cons of it. But I think one of the pros is that I would actually have sort of like a set schedule, and I like having that. I like having structure in my life. It's just sort of, it's nice to be able to know what's going to happen. Sometimes predictability can be a bit of a nuisance in a way, or just can be kind of it can be a bit of an annoyance. I get that, just because having a set schedule, you're just so used to it, and then you get kind of burned out. And I get that. I sort of felt that way towards the end of high school, and I'm not gonna lie, I felt like I've had moments of burning out, just throughout just the year of college. Even though a college year is much shorter than a high school academic year, but I think it's just sort of constant repetition of one thing can definitely lead to getting tired out. So that's definitely something that I have to keep in mind when, even though I am looking forward to the future and just sort of moving forward and stuff like that, I think that I have to keep in mind just sort of the cons and sort of the negative attributes of having a set schedule, to go off, to end on that kind of long thing that I was trying to talk about there. It's a really nice day out, for one thing. I'm finally getting over my cold. I don't know if you can really tell. I'm still a little congested, but I'm not coughing as much, and I don't have, you know, my throat doesn't get as dry as quickly, though I should continue to drink my water. I drank like 3 cups of tea yesterday, which is quite a bit. Luckily, it was not is non-caffeinated, so it wasn't too bad. Um, I've noticed that I've definitely become more. I've become. I used to be more. I used to drink more coffee than I did tea, but I think just being sick, coffee doesn't really lend yourself any like favors because coffee is sort of like a very dry product, and I felt that when I drink coffee, if I'm sick, my throat gets a lot more drier than it did if I didn't drink coffee. So I like having that balance of tea and coffee. I've just become that. I've become a very sophisticated individual, if I do say so myself. And another thing that I sort of wanted to touch upon, I guess, before the year ends is one of the things that I sort of, well, I've mentioned this a lot throughout other episodes, but sort of like what I have as goals, either as in the academic year or even on a year-to-year basis. I haven't really revisited the last episode that I did for last year, and it's crazy to think that like a year has gone by since that I put out that episode. I feel like that wasn't really all that long ago, and it just doesn't feel that way at all. And I think in some ways I have made some changes in a way. I guess like in one way, sort of. I don't even remember what my goals are. I think it was just sort of maintaining path, I guess. I don't know. It might be too early to set resolutions at this moment because we still have like a week to go, But I guess sort of just looking back on this year through the podcast, I guess. I think one of the things that I want to sort of improve on with this podcast in particular is maybe just have a more consistent maybe topic, I guess. Well, maybe not even consistent topic. If it was a consistent topic, I feel like I would just run out of things to talk about. But I think just just being more prepared. I've noticed that if I have something prepared, that I just have more clarity on the topic, and I have somewhat I have more to talk about in a sense, Like I don't mind rambling on like I am right now, but I think that when I have sort of a focus to focus on, I feel that I can make a lot more, just a better dialogue, I guess, and better, even though I'm talking to myself, something to, have a conversation about, I guess. That's why I feel that our music reviews are probably the strongest, like, suit of this podcast, because, like, I feel that, and also having someone else, on the podcast to sort of riff off of, sort of provide some, good banter and, some more, I guess, content, as opposed to just me talking about stuff. And I think I'm sort of like, because I still want to be consistent with my uploads, I guess, just because I like, like I said, I like having sort of like a set schedule in a sense, even though it's not always consistently on a specific day when I upload an episode, but I also like having, just sort of consistency in a sense of like, I have an idea that I want to talk about, and sometimes I do have like one specific thing that I want to talk about. Like, for instance, there was I somewhat prepared for like my TikTok episode, very briefly, it was just something that I kind of wanted to touch upon, just sort of a interesting phenomenon there. But yeah, like right now, I don't really have a specific thing that I really want to address. There's nothing on my mind that's really been, I guess, bothering me, even though I say that at the very beginning, but just sort of things that are like just currently occupying, not something that's like lingering, just sort of very brief, phases of thoughts or whatever, nothing too nothing too concrete, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So I guess that's one thing that I would say that I try to make improvements on, I guess, even though I just said that I'm not going to make any resolutions right now, but I guess that's sort of like that's not a resolution for myself. It's just more for like the podcast. So my voice is something that I do want to work on, I guess, continue to work on. I think just sort of having a consistent topic, maybe, I don't know, a script maybe. I guess another thing is just to put maybe a little more effort into this, in a way. I know that I think that one of the issues that I have is that if I put a lot of effort into it, I feel very like if it doesn't go well, I sort of put myself into this box where I'm like it just wasn't worth the effort, and I sometimes I felt that way before, sometimes projects just sort of fall through and they don't really work out, and I feel as though the time and the effort that I put into it just wasn't worth it, so I get discouraged and I don't put as much effort into it, so I think that one of the approaches that I might have to take, or that I may want to take, is that I have to sort of, work up the motivation to have a, content where, there's a relatively decent amount of effort put into it, like this kind of thing, where I'm just sort of talking to myself, like this doesn't really require that much effort, I mean, it does take a little time for me to upload this onto the podcasting site, but it's not like I don't like I said before, like I don't really edit these, mainly because I feel like it just sort of disrupts the flow of my thoughts, and I sort of like having just sort of me just sort of bantering about certain topics without certain edits and stuff like that, because then I feel like it would be disingenuous, but regardless of that, I think, I'll still, of course I'm going to still continue to keep doing these. I'm just trying to figure out like what other approaches that I may want to take with this podcast, like what sort of creative venues do I want to go with it, like I thought about what it would be like to do like a video podcast, but I think it would just cost too much money currently to do something like that. It would just be making like YouTube videos, and I've tried to do that in the past with some friends, and it just doesn't work out at all, like it's fun doing skits and shooting a basketball and shit like that, but it just doesn't really like, like when you were younger, you obviously wanted to just become viral and stuff like that, back when YouTube was much more innocent and less cynical, corporate driven as it is now. So, we didn't really give a shit about like analytics and shit like that. We just cared about getting big, I guess, which in a sense is analytics, but it's just not, not like in-depth analytics. Like we don't see like what type of people are watching, like what's the age range or anything. Oh, no, we just wanted to just make some videos, I guess. But this is sort of, I guess this is like a little more than that, and I think that just sort of having this sort of venue for me to just talk about whatever it is on my mind is sort of like a nice thing, and I'm just trying to think like what other ways can I approach this, what other ways can I sort of fulfill this somewhat of a craft, because like it does. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been doing this like 4 years ago, like back in high school. I couldn't imagine myself doing something like this, mainly because I just was much more like insecure about my voice and stuff like that, and I'm still kind of working on that for sure. I just think that doing radio and stuff like that sort of helped me open up doors and like sort of, okay, this is something that I could potentially do, and like sort of I was still thinking about like what can I really do with this kind of thing, I thought about like what other approaches I could take that it doesn't take significant amounts of effort, but I still need to put in the effort for it to be, I guess, fulfilling in a sense. Speaking of, I guess, putting in effort, um, I think I think that's like a. I guess I'll touch upon that a little bit, just sort of like an idea of effort. Um, I think back in like elementary, I wanted to be an author. That was sort of one of the things that I wanted to do when I was younger, is to write books, and hopefully that's something that I will still want to do later on. I just know that it takes an incredible amount of time and effort to actually write a book. Editing, multiple editing, revision, um, just a multitude of steps to actually get to a point where you can actually publish a book, and then you don't even know if the book's going to sell that well, right? You have to actually go through a a publisher that you're able to actually sell your book, right? And once I grew older, I realized that it's not the most viable career path for me. I just think that once you learn about finances and stuff like that, I think that writing a book is not the most. It's just not the most. It's just not. It's just a little. It's not the most financially stable career path if you don't have like a vision for what you want to write. And I used to love writing, and I guess I still do in a sense. It's just that it's less of an extent. A lot of these goals and aspirations that you have when you're younger, I guess, sort of dwindle down as you get older. But I think it's just that I realized that you're gonna have to be able to take care of yourself first before you chase your dreams and goals, I guess. Not to be not to be cynical by any means. I'm just saying. I'm just being like realistic in a sense. Just you have to have you have to have a little bit of perspective in a sense. So that's something that I didn't really think about afterwards. I also wanted to. I've mentioned this before, but I also wanted to be I wanted to go into the NBA when I was like in middle school. I was really into basketball. I played basketball every single day. Every single day, I played basketball. I didn't do anything else. Though I am glad that I did that, because I don't know what else what I would have done. I probably would have just been. Yeah, I don't know what else I would have done if I hadn't had basketball in middle school. So I am glad that I had that. But I was just so obsessed with it. I used to go. I used to look through like catalogs and stuff like that. That aside, I think that's another thing that that in order to get to a level, you were either gifted with athleticism, or you put in enough effort to build up your skill. On top of whatever athleticism that you may have already had. And I've learned that that's just not that's just not a good path for me to go on. Playing basketball, it's just not something that I just realized that like maybe like freshman year of high school. I think I was like, I was on the bench, and I was like, this is just not going to work out, is it? And it just wasn't satisfying anymore. And I think that sort of connects with other experiences where maybe I felt like I've put effort into a project and it just wasn't fulfilling. But I think that it really depends on what you put your effort into. I think that I just need to have sort of like not a list, but just sort of a map of where I want to go with a certain thing. I think I have to I have to map out like a certain project. Like, say if I'm doing like an interview for the radio station, like I plan that in advance and stuff like that, and I have to think about like, okay, will this be satisfying, or would this effort be enough to put on radio? And sometimes it doesn't end up the way I want to, but even though I am like disheartened that it didn't turn out the way that I wanted to, like I've made some like edits that just turn out to be terrible, like the audio quality gets all fucky and shit. But in the end, you learn from that experience, and sometimes it's like, I enjoyed actually conducting the interview, and although the end product wasn't as, wasn't what I hoped it to be, like I still enjoyed the process of creating something, and I think that just goes for a lot of other things, and just certain projects, certain activities. So like for me, like basketball and like writing, I think that those things just aren't something that I want to put my effort. I realized that I just didn't want to put my effort into, because the end result would probably not be as fulfilling, And through that experience, I would still be kind of miserable, just sort of writing and stuff like that. And writing is hard. Writing is really difficult. I really admire a lot of writers and sort of the processes they go through to create, just creating a piece of literature. And it takes an immense amount of effort. And I think that I've sort of like rekindled my enjoyment of literature just relatively recently. So, and sort of my appreciation for authors in general. Just because I know, or I can understand sort of the amount of time and sort of the choreography it takes to create the book the book that I'm reading, sort of the pages that the pages that are bound together and stuff like that, and hopefully for those people that it was a fulfilling and satisfying experience just creating that, and hopefully there's other people out there that enjoy that kind of work, and I'm sure there are. But that being said, I think that I'm still trying to figure out, like, tying it back to this podcast, like I'm still trying to figure out like what's something that I can do with this that sort of can lead to something a little more creative, other than just me sort of talking on the podcast. Like I'll like I said, I'll still continue to do this because I just sort of enjoy just having a stream of thought just come out, I guess. But what other types of creative ventures can I take along with just me spitting out some bullshit? I guess, that's probably going to do it for today. I'll be back next week with one more episode for the year, just to wrap it up. Probably be talking some more similar topics. Maybe I'll go over holiday things. I don't know whatever that means, I guess. Anyways, it's been Save the Semantics signing off.